Good afternoon, Richard. How are you?
Good afternoon, Guy. Thank you very much for inviting me to your show.
Thanks for coming on. Obviously, you've been on before, and last time we spoke about your book.
Yes.
So, Biggleswick, how are you getting on?
Well, very well. Thank you very much. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm sort of three quarters through, I suppose, the second draft.
So, have you got an idea of when it might be
Well,
published?
I had hoped that it would have been done by now, but of course, writing fiction and characters and trying to
Hmm.
write prose, it's very difficult. Well, certainly for me. I mean, I'm sure some people can string more than one sentence together and make it sound good, but yeah, I keep looking back at it and I go, "Oh, this is rubbish," you know. And then you pick up somebody else's book, a fiction book, and you go, "How is it that they've got such a great command of the English language, and I'm really struggling?" Because I don't want to write Peter and Jane go into the conspiracy movement.
Hmm. Do you think though that there are people out there that put these amazing novels together that have had an awful lot of help though?
Well, I don't know who would be helping them.
Well, an amazing editor.
Um, I don't know. I always assume that the author's work is the author's work. The editor might
Hmm.
might be just sort of going put this paragraph here and cut out that word there. But our editor. I mean, know a lot of people have ghostwriters
Hmm.
who are
Yeah.
experienced. But you know, if you're not writing a book every day, if it's not your main profession, or if your background in English literacy isn't very good, you're not going to have a command of the English language and just pluck out words from here.
Hmm.
And my fear is that it's a bit pedestrian.
You said that before, but I've heard it, and I think people are going to love it. But it could
I
be.
Well,
I,
I do think that if you're recording the audiobook and you've got, say, an actor or something, you can enthuse and you can make it sound interesting, even dead dialogue. But when you haven't got that and you're reading it cold, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not that confident in what I'm doing at the moment. We'll see.
I think for me, I'll write something. I'll put another chapter together, and I read through it, and I think, and sometimes I think we're our own worst critic because you care.
Well, yes.
And I think that's the difference, isn't it? That you really care. And for people that don't know what you're writing about, I mean, it's a fictional story of a town that turns its back on the council and starts again.
Yes, effectively. That is the story, and I mean because it's got what I would consider truth bombs in there. People may
Mm,
say it's all a load of old rubbish, and it doesn't really matter because it's fiction, and hopefully it's entertainment first, with perhaps some basis of truth behind it. Um,
yeah. I mean, the bits I've heard, and I know, obviously, I think your command of the English language is incredible. But maybe I'm a bit biased. I've always thought that. I've been following your channel for a long, long time. So maybe I'm being biased, but I don't think so. I don't
well,
think so.
I hope you're I hope you're right.
I
I
think you've
mean,
got a bestseller there. I think people might even use it as a guidebook.
no, I don't. I don't think they use it as a guidebook. I mean, it is a fictional story, and the thing about a fictional story is you are manipulating the characters to a
Hmm,
bit. The characters have their own lives, and they dictate how they want to be written and things like that. But you are in control of the story, and there's certain, in order for this story to work, there's certain parameters that have to be in place. And in the real world, those parameters could be in place. I mean, I've tried to make it credible, but not everywhere has the certain elements that needed to be in place for my story. But
hmm,
there is, I suppose, legal, lawful basis behind it, which people can
yeah.
roll their eyes at if they wish to, or take on board, you know. And I may be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right.
Have you based any of the characters in your book on anyone in real life?
No.
You haven't. There's not anybody that in the book that you
Um,
pictured someone you've met before, or
No, it's funny that because I've often, sometimes I've thought in the past, I've thought of I was writing a children's book, and there was a king, a brother of a king, and I did sort of think of him as a sort of Terry Thomas type of character. I say absolute shat, can't possibly be serious, and all of this, but they soon morph into their own creation.
Yeah.
So I haven't really based this on anything. I mean, there is in the book, there's a truth teller, and he is a sort of an amalgamation of lots of people who get up on stage and start talking about things, but he's not any one specifically. At first, I thought he would be, and I was worried that I would be writing in the guise of somebody under sort of plain clothes sort of thing. But no, no, I mean people may say all the characters are the same. That's
Mm.
that's the thing, because every character you ought to be able to listen to each character and know which character you're hearing or reading.
Yeah.
Um, but that's not so easy if you. I mean, this is quite a large cast,
Yeah. Yeah, it
and
is.
so it's different if you've got two or three characters. You can very easily sort of give them regional accents and things like that, and or manners of speech.
Yeah.
But uh, I haven't really on this one. I haven't really gone into too much of backstories for the characters, because it's, as you said at the beginning, it's sort of it's more about the event than the people in it,
Mm.
I
Yeah.
suppose. Whereas previous stuff I would do a lot more work on.
And you've had to put a lot of information in it, haven't you, about what's going on with,
Well, that's
you
what
know,
that in a way that's what ruins it as a book for me, because it's not like, you see, you're writing factual books and you do the research and this is this is the facts as I see it. I'm writing a story, but I'm also writing a little bit in real time, so real time events are going in, and also how I see the world, I suppose, and
yeah,
the facts of the world. And there's a lot of explanation that needs to go in for people who may not. Now, I imagine mostly it'll be my audience, because I'm only going to promote the book on my show, really. I'm not going to put it on Amazon and any big corporation, because I don't see why I should. Um, but there's still a lot of information that they will understand, but I also want people who are perhaps not familiar with this territory to be able to understand, even if they roll their eyes and go, well, that's blatantly not true, that's blatantly not true. But they may come across something and go, well, oh, that happened to my neighbor, or
yeah,
I've had a letter like that. And then they go through the explanation of it. So in some ways, I'm hampered by the the theme of the story, I suppose, or by the reality of the story.
yeah, yeah,
Which having done this now, I'll be so thrilled when it's finished. I've got other stories where I can just let my imagination run riot, and I much rather write that way. I wouldn't want to write. Couldn't do what you do, write factual books, because I would
really.
no, because I would keep thinking, have I got it wrong?
Yeah, I do use the word, well, allegedly quite a bit, because a lot of the information that I get, it's difficult to know if what I found is true or not and who put it out there. I might have a CIA document in front of me that's been declassified, but was it? Is it? Is what I'm looking at real? And we just don't know anymore, especially with AI. We've got no
Hmm.
idea what we're looking at. It's funny, because I said to you a little while ago that I was thinking about writing a book, because over over the last year, you've said to me a few times, is has anybody out there got a diary, or their memoirs of someone who lived in the Tartarian period and went through the reset and popped out the other side, or left something behind? And I can't find anything. I have now found a Spanish newspaper, but that's all I've got. So I decided that I might have a go at writing a fictional novel about someone who lived in that time period. So I took Nikola Tesla's name, made an anagram of it, and I put a post up on Facebook. And I said, "This is I can't remember his name now. It's very hard to
Good start.
pronounce. It's so hard to pronounce." And I said that he lived in 1776. This photo was taken in 1776, and he lived in Crimea, and he was killed during the Great Reset. And then I explained what he did, and a little bit of his family history, and then about his wife and his children. And at the end, and I put, this is for entertainment purposes, it's just fictional. And the first thing someone commented was, I didn't think they had cameras back then.
Yep.
Because all I
That's what
did,
you're up against.
because I just put a random picture uh, of just anyone, and the next person said to me, well, that name doesn't sound like they're Ukrainian. And I kept saying, have you read the last sentence? And I've realized what I need to do is, if I ever do that again, the last sentence that says for entertainment purposes only needs to be the first sentence,
Yeah.
because I don't think people read everything.
No, no, and I agree. But I do think that's a good point, though. If you're writing about somebody who is in, where did you say it was? Crimea.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you,
So if you're
yeah.
writing about someone who's in Crimea, you would expect them to have a name that does follow that, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I just, for the life of me, I can't remember it. It was about a month ago, and
Yeah.
I just put one post up. I took Nikola Tesla's name, made an anagram of it, and just wrote something randomly. Found a picture of a Russian military figure from as early as I could, and just cobbled it together, put it out there just to see what people's reaction would be.
Mm.
Because, like you'd said, there's nothing out there. It's impossible to find anything like a diary or memoir. But to have the first person say that I didn't think they had cameras then, and I thought, well, I did say that I'd made this up. I don't know what
Yes.
else I
Yes.
could do.
I suppose if you are putting a picture onto what is taken as a factual site,
Mm,
then I imagine, people are already in that psyche that this is supposed to be a genuine thing. And so they're sort of pulling it apart to help you, I suppose, to go, oh, by the way, they didn't have cameras there, did they? Uh,
yeah.
whereas if it's on a writer's site of, here's a fictional book and what have you, then
Mm.
then people are already in that space, aren't they?
Yeah, and this wasn't on the a Tartarian group. This was actually on my own
Oh, right.
personal. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, but I learned a valuable lesson there, that the most important part of that post was to tell people this was fictional.
That's-
It was for fun, and it needed to be the first thing I told them before they read anything else. So I think if I do that, and do write something like you, like create a work of fiction and write a novel, then I need to make it abundantly clear from the very beginning that this is
Yes.
fictional.
But then
Uh,
I suppose you'd put that in the author's note, wouldn't you?
oh,
Or in the
absolutely.
forward or something like that in the book to say, the whole point of this exercise is to imagine what it would be like living in Tartarian
Mm,
world, and, blah, 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 whatever your explanation is. And obviously, this is all characters are fiction, and anybody of the same name, it's all by coincidence, all that sort of
yes.
stuff
Yeah.
that they say.
But you have encouraged me, watching you go through this process, and I've really enjoyed the bits that you've read out to me while you've been writing. I've really enjoyed it, and I've gone from just wanting to pump factual information out, almost like textbooks, one after another, to actually thinking slightly differently about it. So, and you're questioning as well, why is there nothing out there? Why can't we find a diary? All I found is this newspaper. Anyway, digressing, are we? The reason for wanting to talk to you
Hmm.
was because I've been banging on and on about the fact that I think that we were cloned, and that the Anunnaki or Elohim came along 250,000 years ago, tweaked Neanderthal man, and popped us out the other end to go and mine gold for them. And I've kind of been obsessed with that, and I can't get out of that mindset. I've even tried to look at the story of Adam and Eve, and compare it and say, well, that kind of does align. And but you're not on the same, literally, you're not on the same page as me, are you?
Well,
What do you think? What do you think happened? Or
I have no idea
where?
what happened. I mean, I have no idea what happened, but when people make this claim, I keep hearing this, and I haven't
Mm,
studied it and all of this. And they talk about the Anunnaki, and they talk about so many million years ago, and then Elohim and all of this. And I first go, where did this stuff originate from? How do we know these names? Who's first mentioned Anunnaki? Where did that come from? Now I don't know. So I would be asking you, okay, this is what you believe, and I'll give you a reason why I don't think it's possible, but in a minute. But where does the word Anunnaki come from, and who is this Anunnaki?
Well, it was Zachariah Sitchin that first started talking about this. But since then, lots of people have gone out there and discredited what he said. But it's based upon the Emerald Tablets, the story, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Some people say that was found in Turkey not that long ago. But the story seems to be well, transferred into different religious texts and beliefs all across the world. But some people say that they came from the sky. I think in South America, they say that they came from the water. They actually appeared from the ocean. Some people suggest that it was sort of like they arrived on some sort of like metal ark, and some that it was a flying machine. But they're always a sort of bluey color. And in my mind, I always think of the film Avatar, and I see this sort of bluey, very large, sort of giant figure that's almost translucent, and that does appear to be the kind of story that's repeated. But there's someone that he's written quite a lot of books. He's quite a big selling author, but you can also find him on YouTube. Called Freddie Silva. He's a Portuguese guy, but he doesn't have an accent. He lives actually up in Scotland, and a lot of people follow him.
Hmm.
But that's for me, it was quite compelling because growing up, I didn't believe in the Bible. I believed in Darwin's theory of evolution. And then I started to question it as I got older because I burned quite badly in the sun. And it was that made me question it. I thought, well, how have I evolved to meet my environment if I can't stay outside for more indirect sunlight on a hot day? I'm a
Hmm.
little bit like a pig in that, I almost need to go and roll myself in mud to stop myself from burning. And I thought that this isn't evolution. And my mum used to say the reason people have bad backs is because we haven't fully evolved yet. To be able to permanently be on two of our limbs rather than all four. And she used to always say that. So I've questioned it a long time. I mean, I joined the Freemasons to find out where we came from and who was in charge and were we made. But obviously, I didn't get very far. The third rung of 33, I'm not going to find out very much at all, apart from how to raise money for charity and the funny handshake. But it's just where I am, and I it doesn't matter what I look at and what I read. I seem to go back to the Anunnaki all the time.
But I suppose what I'm asking is, where is the source of this Anunnaki? And you mentioned the what's name tablets. I mean, I'm not
Emerald
au fait,
tablets,
the
yeah,
Emerald tablets. So how do we know that who made them? And how do we know that
yeah,
what's said on it is true? How do we know that whoever's translated it was telling the truth? I mean, I suppose I, I guess I'm trying to find out, and I'm not an expert, and I'm not certainly not suggesting that anybody who's done all this study is wrong in any way, because that would be very naive of me. I'm just trying to sort of go, how do we know that any of what's said, if it all comes back to one source and it's down
mm,
really to a translation, how do we know that that's true? It
yeah,
may have just said, I've popped out to the pub, I'll be back in 10 minutes. But someone said the anarchy came down and manipulated with our DNA and turned us into, and suddenly this myth has gone all over the place.
yeah,
That's all I'm asking is how do we know? And the other problem is, of course, we are very we're pattern seeking animals. We'll see patterns where there might be patterns, but that doesn't mean that they've been put there specifically. It just things happen in patterns. Rainbows have a array of different colors. It's a pattern, but it's not been manipulated in any way. That's just the spectrum of color or the spectrum of light. And I was going to go there with something else, but we seek these patterns. Oh, yes. And then, of course, you end up, as you said, with Avatar painting into people's pictures
hmm
what we might think these things look like. from somebody who's on the design of the film. I said, well, what do we make these? Well, let's have them blue and we'll have them with these spindly bodies or whatever they look like. And
Mm.
suddenly, of course, we're all like, oh yeah, that's how they look like. Um, and then you get all this. I mean, the other thing that really bugs me is these pictures of aliens, these greys with tiny, flimsy little bodies, massive heads with big almond eyes, and you just think that this, and people are believing that this is potentially true. Now, until I've actually met one, I couldn't tell you, but I have seen some footage of some what looks like puppetry. And you just think, why would you design somebody? Not why would you design some? If an alien existed, um, it would have to have in my mind, it would have to have a far better body than us. And yet it's got this massive head with this tiny little body that can barely hold it up. Um, and its body seems so awkward and insignificant. Whereas I look at our bodies, the human body, and I think we have our what do you call it? The disposable thumb. Not disposable.
Yeah.
What's it? Thumb. The fingers.
Oh, crikey.
You know what I mean.
Yes, I
But
do. I
we got
do.
the,
Oh.
we can manipulate our bodies, and as humans, we've conquered this earth by being able to build things, being able to create things, create tools, move gracefully,
Mhm.
beautifully, dance, sing, use our voices. We can hear to a certain spectrum. We're this physical body is so perfect, certainly for the earth,
Yeah.
um, that anything else, I think, if it came, it would have to be so much better. Because if these are so-called grey aliens, or these what's the name aliens, have these flimsy, hopeless little bodies, how did they build their spaceships then? How did they build the tools to make their spaceships? How did they, polish them in such perfect way? How did they do all that if they can barely lift up a fork? And I just
Yeah.
think that then people say, oh, but it's the gravity was a lot less, or they could do conjured it up in their mind and all this sort of stuff. And I just think, well, if that's true, why the hell do they want to come here on a,
That's a
on a
very good point.
planet that is extremely physically based? Um, you know, so and so I just find all of this, as much as I would like to believe it, I struggle to believe it because it just doesn't seem logic.
Mm. I
And
mean, obviously, the backstory with the Anunnaki is that the, I mean, first of all, they say that that race in particular from Nibiru were giant, sort of 12 to 15 feet tall, and um, but came here specifically to mine gold. They needed gold, so that people have, they reckon that alien races have been coming here for a millennia. For
but there's not
for
much gold here. I mean, why would you come
mm,
all the way from wherever you come to a planet that doesn't really have a lot of gold?
that's very true. But I think they were searching. Well, the story is that they had a problem with their atmosphere, and they were going to take gold, put it into particles, and then blast it into the atmosphere to repair a damaged ozone.
Do,
That's the story.
do you ever not think that so much of this stuff is all, you see, I've always found this very difficult, and I say this to Julia as well, my partner. I said all these things, they sound all ever these stories and everything sound very man-made.
Hmm.
That they had trouble with their atmosphere and this, that, and the other, and you go, yeah, this sounds like a Hollywood writer writing it. Now, if there's an alien out there, I imagine that, and he can travel through space at speeds of light and what have you. I imagine that she, whatever it is so radically different from us
Hmm.
that they don't have names like Numidia or whatever, which just sounds like so humanoid. Everything. Whenever I hear all this, it always seems so damn human, like somebody sat and written it down, and made it up, and
Mm.
just dreamt it
Mm.
up. I would expect the difference between an ant and a human.
Yeah.
It would be so radically different
Hmm.
that we could not conceive it. And yet, little green men from Mars and little blue blokes and big heads. And I just think, no, if there's something alien, it'll be in my mind, I may be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right by any means, but why would they be similar with two arms and two legs? Why wouldn't they
Mm.
be just mostly grotesque, not grotesque necessarily but to us odd?
Yeah, yeah, kind
Um,
of, yeah,
yeah, I mean, they may be more ethereal. Now, I could get that if something was more
yes.
ethereal and ghost-like and wispy and was, or perhaps was watery. I could get that because that would be more alien to, oh, you just look like a human. You're just, so it all seems made up.
Mm. So do you because that I kind of I do agree with you, and in respect to if it's something that is that far more advanced than we are, then there's a probability that it's perhaps something we can't even see at all.
Yeah. Well,
Almost in a completely different dimension. It's more of a consciousness than actually a physical thing. And it does seem like, I mean, you've obviously, we've all seen the Roswell incident and the alleged autopsy of the little grey aliens they found, and we've got that, haven't we? We've got this sort of ET almost.
I mean, it's a very 50s look.
Yes, it
And
is.
here we are in 2025, and they're still coming out with this, 1950s B movie alien look. And you just think, oh, come on, update your bloody aliens, for goodness sake, make us believe something a little
Mm,
bit. But you hit on a very interesting point there, and this is the thing that I find is the crux of the matter for me. When this stories of the Anunnaki have come down and they've mucked about with our DNA, or they've cloned us, and this is why I don't think that's possible at all, because it all comes down to me. It comes down to consciousness. Uh, Now, maybe I am the only one that feels this in the entire Earth, but when I quieten myself, and of course you read stories and you hear things on the internet, and other people apparently feel the same, but it doesn't seem to be everybody. If I quieten myself down and concentrate and go into myself, as it were, I am aware when I've got rid of all the distractions that I'm actually all I am is some form of consciousness,
mhm.
and I'm in a body, or I have use of this body, and I'm peering through these eyes, well, one eye at the moment because I've lost the other one, and I'm using the other senses to understand this so-called 3D world, which may actually be only a hologram, or it may just be, vibrations. I don't know. That's actually on the fly and is created a bit like a computer game. I have no notion. But all I am is consciousness. Now, you might manipulate as you can, as we can in hospitals. You can chop somebody's leg off and you can chop somebody's arm off and their ears off. Can't actually chop their head off and let them survive. And you can survive mostly with, a bit of mutilation to the body. But the minute you can't mutilate consciousness, because all you are is you're aware. And I
Mhm.
think that we're all part and parcel of the same thing.
Yeah.
So this is where I find it very difficult to understand that you could clone something and it would be conscious, because where does the spark of that consciousness come from? The spark of life. Where does that come from? I don't think you can clone something. And as far as things like Dolly the clone and all these other things, how do we know that's true? We've told it. We're told everything everything is hearsay.
So do you think then, with regard to Dolly the sheep, that there is a possibility in your mind, this shadow of doubt, that there is a possibility that never happened?
Well, they may have created something that can. I was going to say walk and talk, but walk and bah.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I don't know. I just don't think I'm not convinced that you could create something that has consciousness. I don't think that's in our power.
It's funny you say that, because every time I put a post up, or put something on, had a video on YouTube, and it's mentioned cloning somewhere in it, that there'll be somebody that actually comments and says, "Do clones have a soul?" And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the same thing, aren't we?
Hmm.
How could a clone have a consciousness? But what's the difference ultimately? Is there a massive difference really scientifically between IVF and a clone if they're using kind of the same technology? Really, to my mind, there's not an incredible shift in mindset when you consider how IVF happens and then how they say that they clone. So that would, perhaps suggest that if you were an IVF child, IVF baby, that do you still have a soul?
Well, I mean, that's a very good question because the question really is how does the soul get into the body?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And
Now,
what is
if
it?
you're able to if you're able to grow a limb, then possibly you could say you could grow a body that will, over a period of time, grow up and develop and get old like most other humans do. But without the spark of life, how is it animated?
Yeah, but when you
Unless it's
said,
a robot.
as soon as you said spark of life, I instantly saw Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and then I thought back to how they actually got the cells to replicate when they made, allegedly, when made Dolly, and that was short bursts of electricity. So is that what it takes? Is it literally a spark? Is that what it takes?
Well, I can't answer that, can I? I mean,
No,
I don't know,
it's
but
just I just saw Frankenstein. When you said spark of life, I thought I remember the sparks. I remember watching the
but you do have to remember Frankenstein was an invention of an 18-year-old or 19-year-old woman. It's
mm.
not, it didn't happen, as far as I know.
No, no, I'm just talking about the backstory, because Mary Shelley had been following the work of people that had been trying to create a homunculus, which I was talking to you about the other day, where they're trying to make artificial life, and it was that inspired Mary Shelley to go on to write it, and it was electricity, and a few people had said that it just requires a spark of life. And I thought, is that what it takes for our consciousness to kick in? Does it require some sort of electricity? So no, it was just more of a thought there. I,
Mm.
I had a light bulb moment when you said spark of life. So
Well, I imagine, I mean, you know, consciousness is clearly, well, I was going to say clearly, it's not clearly anything that we can really define because people are trying to say what consciousness is. All I can tell you is at this present moment, and the present moment is the only moment I know because the past has gone and the future is yet to happen. So I'm only ever in the present, this consciousness, and all I know is I am aware.
hmm,
But and now there may be limitations to that awareness. Then the limitations are that I might also not just be me as I think of me, but I may be everyone. In other words, this, like if you
right,
imagine rain is water and all the droplets, but the water is the droplet is really part of everyone because it's all water.
yeah,
And in a way, consciousness might be we may all be the one, the creator, God, whatever you want to call it. And that seems more logical to me that we are all part of this one, experiencing something from sort of almost the ends. It's a bit like fiber optics. You remember those
yeah,
fiber optic lights? It's almost like
yeah,
we're the little dots of light on this one fiber optic thing. So it's doing that, but each one is only experiencing an individual bit of bit of life, but they're all being fed into a master brain or whatever, the consciousness as I would
hmm,
think of it. But that so that my consciousness is limited to this sphere. But actually, if one could lift the veil, and I think that's possibly what happens when you meditate or you go back or when you die,
hmm.
is that you become one with everything again.
So, what do you think happens when we die? Do you think that we reconnect or go back to this source?
Well, I don't think we ever. I say I don't think we go anywhere. I don't think.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I don't think the world is a planet. I don't think it's a flat plane. I don't think it's anything. that we can actually. I think it has the appearance of that, and we have the
Yeah.
appearance of traveling for the benefit of our experience here. But I don't think there is anywhere, and so therefore, I mean, it's a very difficult concept to get your head around. But
Mm.
um, so, in other words, when we die in the physical sense, I don't think we go anywhere. We just are. We are now, and we are forever. It's just we have these experiences, which may be so many experiences that nobody could ever, a million, billion, trillion, vincillion makes you quite alien type experiences in which there are so many, and they may be experiences of being aliens on different planets, and whatever, and so if this Anunnaki thing happened and what have you, that's all, and it's all another part of that fiber optic,
Yeah.
massive cables. And I don't think we go anywhere. I don't think we go and travel anywhere. I think
Yeah.
we're here. Everything's here. Everything's in the same. Well, I don't think it's not really space. That's the thing because it's just it just is, and of course this is very difficult for a lot of people to understand unless you have really sort of just experienced being. I mean, I just think everything is, and so you don't actually go anywhere. It doesn't help, does it?
No, but that does, because that's kind of, as I understand it anyway, that's kind of what Jesus was trying to get across. That we are all God. God is us. We it is everything, and we all belong to the creator, the original source, and we go back there when we die, and we always are and always will be. And what I wonder with that is, because it probably sounds a little bit morbid, but as I've gotten older, I never used to care when I was younger. I used to think, well, you die, you just, chuck me in the incinerator and job done. But as I've gotten older, I actually do, I sort of worry about it sometimes. And I think, what happens? And, you know, do you keep coming back? Because a lot of people believe in reincarnation. Do you keep coming back until you get it right? Or, you know, what do you meet up with, consciously? Do you meet up with everybody that you've lost? Do you reconnect? What happens? Is it, and I'm guessing it's more of a consciousness, it's not a physical experience. But it, I don't know about you, but I do think about it. What happens? Do we know what's going on?
Well, I mean, I guess one has one's own intuition into how you feel about things. I don't, you see, I don't think we're all separate anyway. So when you say, one might meet past relatives and what have you, we're
Hmm.
already those past relatives. We are all one and the same. So I think that this is, so when you say we come back, I don't think we've left, so
Right.
it's not that you're coming back to any, but and the other thing is, I also think that all these experiences from millions of years ago to millions of years into the future, it's all happened. Time is it's only relative to us, but it's not relative to consciousness
No.
because there is only now.
Yeah.
There's no other time than now.
Yeah.
And we can measure this in our 3D world and kind of go, it's like a tape. It's like a piece of tape on a playhead. It's moving, but the playhead is always the thing that's playing, that is experiencing thing. The tape is passing by, but the tape head, which is the consciousness, if you like, which is playing something and I'm talking about sort of, recording tape,
Yeah.
2 inch
Yeah.
tape.
I can see it. Yeah.
Um, what's happened has happened. It's no longer on the playhead, and what's coming is not yet on the playhead, and the playhead is still. It's like that. So you can measure it. You can take the tape and go, yeah, that was 20 minutes of Vobes talking rubbish. But the moment that the playhead, which I believe is the consciousness, as it were, it's only ever playing at it's only ever playing what is in front of it.
Yeah.
And I think but like a tape, you've got the future and the past all in that tape, but you can't do anything with it until you play it. And it's when you play it is its it's playing out. But
Yeah.
so a roll of tape is kind of like there's the future, the past, and everything. And I think that's kind of it. And each individual are we've got our tape playing. The sad part is we can't see when the end of the reel's coming, and when it
Yeah.
snaps,
Yeah. Ain't
oops.
that the truth? Yeah. So do you think then, just you know, and I know we can't possibly know this until it happens, but do you think your consciousness continues then
Yes.
after your
Well, I
body?
don't know how much I will be conscious of this.
Hmm.
There may be the memory of it somewhere, but I don't think it matters. I
So
don't.
as for sort of heaven and hell, for me, that I see them as being things that were put in place to sort of control us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think.
not,
I mean, I don't
I,
think they exist at all. I think it's all
no, I
rubbish.
don't either. No, but I do believe in the consciousness continuing because that I don't know. Again, we none of us know any of this stuff, but I've heard several times that people have said that actually the weight of someone within a few seconds of it dying reduces just by a few grams, and they believe that that is the consciousness, and that they don't know. The scientists have never been able to pinpoint whereabouts in the brain that is actually in, where that's controlled from. What part of the brain is it? I mean, my gut would be it's somehow connected to the pineal gland, but which, as we know from what they've been doing with water and the food that we eat, seems to be calcified quite early on in our childhood. But they've never been able to pinpoint where our consciousness is. Is it around us? Because we've all experienced situations where you walk into a room and you think, oh, that person, there's something about them I don't feel comfortable, or they walk in a room and they smile and everybody seems happy. They've got this sort of aura about them, which perhaps aura, soul, vibration is the same thing. We're all talking about the same thing, but where is that? Is that in us or is it around us? Could
I
you dissect, lobotomize it?
um. Well, I don't. You see, I think of the brain. It's a physical organ. It's a bit like a wireless radio. I think our thoughts are not in here. I think our thoughts are out there somewhere, but they may even be in us. They're everywhere, as it were, because there is nowhere. So they're there, but they're not anywhere. And I see the brain as a radio that is tuned in to our frequency, which is why you have kids with autism or people with ADHD or any of these sort of mental problems or dementia or anything, is where the tuning has gone off balance. And like if you have an old wireless, an analog wireless, and you're tuning in and you get and sometimes you can get it too trebly or it'll be too bassy because the signal isn't, you're not in the right proper band. You're at the at an edge of the band or off the
Mm,
scale or on the spectrum, whatever you want to call it. And that's why I think you'll get too much treble. Now, those sort of people who've got too much treble, I think, are the ones that can really focus so much better on very specific things,
yes.
but perhaps don't have a lot of other areas like social skills and things because it's not important to them, but they are hyper focused.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, except that if they've got to live in a world where it's acceptable to laugh at a joke that you don't understand, that they have sort of problems. But that's why I think the brain and these heavy metals and things that come into our world affect our brain and dementia and things like that. It gets the tuning out.
Yeah.
And so we may not fully understand the consciousness that we have because the brain's not working in direction with us as 3D humanoid whatevers. But I think our mind isn't in our body, and inspiration and stuff. I think that's where we are. We are connected to everything, and there may well be limits to that, but I think that some people's inspiration and some people's download, as they call it, or uh, getting to their higher self or the subconscious mind, is where they access more of. the general consciousness than is in us. And I think we've all got that ability to a certain degree because we're not in the brain. I mean, I think it's ludicrous to think that we are contained within the brain. It's just the brain is able to interpret those functions in the way a radio interprets a radio signal.
So that could be very. I was just thinking when you were talking about the tuning in and the sort of bandwidth that perhaps that where you mentioned autism and ADHD and those kind of associated issues, that perhaps it is the bandwidth that's out, and that is the spectrum. It's the spectrum of light. And if
Mm,
sound ultimately is light, frequency, vibration, that actually that they're tuned into it to a slightly different spectrum
mm,
of light, and they're receiving a slightly different signal to us, and
yes.
therefore perhaps have a different understanding of what's important and what isn't. And
Yes.
sometimes I wonder whether or not they've got it right and we've got it wrong.
I don't think there is a right or wrong. It's
I
just,
mean,
the majority I mean, we're all on the spectrum at some degree.
mm,
And fortunately, enough of us are in the middle, it seems to me, to be able to um, have some form of communal life. And there are those who is perhaps a little bit on the other side of the spectrum, or a bit over to the left or right, whatever, however you want to explain it. And they, to a certain degree, they don't need us. They don't need a lot of certain parts that we need, or makes up our lives. But at the same time, they need us more in order to do the things which it hasn't occurred to them as people that they really need. And I think you see that reflected in certain social skills that the
yeah,
people in the middle have kind of accepted a social norm. And the further you go out, the less that's important. Um, so that
yes,
and I've had jokes with somebody, I won't mention his name, but somebody on the show and various other people, and I'll make a joke, and I know it's not registering as a joke, or they've
hmm,
gone, "Oh yeah, that's a joke," and they've taken it so seriously, and you just
yeah,
think, okay, you're not interested in those moments where you have light relief, or you can kind of just go with the flow a bit. No, I'm here. I'm very, this is the groove I'm in. I don't come out of that groove because they can't. But I don't think that makes them. It's not good or bad. That's the trouble with us humans. We want to sort of label everything and say
yes, we do.
this is these are good people, these are bad people, or these are
Mm,
damaged people. I don't think none of them are damaged, but it may be the brain bit is not tuning in because it's damaged by physical things. But the the consciousness of the soul of that individual, let's say, is still pure and perfect because it
yeah.
cannot be anything else but.
The people that I've worked with though over the years, when I worked with vulnerable kids, and most of them were autistic, and they all shared the same thing in common. They were all incredibly intelligent, and all were obsessed with one particular thing. There was something that they were incredibly knowledgeable about. And what I meant by, perhaps they've got it right and we've got it wrong, is that they didn't seem to worry. None of them seemed to worry about the things that I worried about when I was their age. Where am I going to be 10 years from now? What I hope I have a car better than my friends, and why aren't I wearing the latest stuff? And that didn't that wasn't on their radar, and they were actually totally focused on very individual specific things. One was very knowledgeable about music, the other one was very knowledgeable about art, and one was actually knowledgeable about vehicles, including planes, fire engine, trains, everything, and
Mm.
could and one was absolutely obsessed with conspiracy theories, and at 16 years old was telling me things that I didn't know, and then went on to look into and found out that they were bang on the money. And I just found that absolutely incredible to have a completely different point of view and purpose to me. I'd get home and worry about so many different things when I was the same age as them. And I just wonder sometimes, to label the certain people, like you said, we're labeling them, aren't we? We're always trying to. Everybody's a something there. That they're autistic. They're a narcissist. They're They've got ADHD, they've got this, they've got. We seem desperate to label people, and actually, the bottom line is that everybody's unique, and we're all quirky in our own way, aren't we? And some of us hide it. Some of us are extrovert, some of us are introvert, but everybody's different, and I think some of us are just better at masking that from people, from the public, than others. But underneath, we know that there's something about us that makes us perhaps a little bit different. Somebody said to me the other day, do you think the reason that, and they mentioned you, they mentioned several people, but they mentioned you in particular, said the reason that there are people out there that are trying to share the truth, wake people up, so to speak, and alert people to what's going on. Do you think that that is because they share memories of things that have happened before? Like if we've have gone through resets before, that they're sharing ancestral memories of that, and they're trying to prevent it from repeating itself.
Um, I don't know. Um, there's, so I mean, I could be asking, why do I do the thing I do, and I don't have
Mm,
to do it.
that's exactly.
What's the drive to try and relay what I believe is a truism? When 5 years ago, I had no notion of it at all. I was too busy in the ego, I suppose, to try and further my career because that's what I felt one was supposed to do. Um, I I don't know. It's possible. I mean, people talk about star seeds, don't they? And they talk about
Mm-hmm.
people having chosen this life to come into this world. Um, and that I haven't really given that too much thought when I've sat there smoking my pipe of an evening, contemplating the world. As
That is
to
meditation, isn't it?
oh,
The
it is.
pipe is meditation,
Oh,
absolutely.
no, definitely, absolutely, it's meditation. Um, I mean, I think all of this ideas of that we've come before that we're trying to get a message over it and all of that. I think it's all really part of the same thing that what is true, and if what I perceive as the world is that everything has happened like on that roll of tape, and and each of us are just playing the tape, and we no notion of when it ends, we can't remember when it started, we're just sort of aware suddenly. I don't know what age we become aware, 6 or 7, because up until then we're not really aware, and suddenly we're kind of going, oh, I'm here and I've been here for a bit, but I don't really remember being a baby, and I don't really remember my third birthday, but I might remember images of it, but I'm not sure I was present or not. It's like that's a bit weird. Um, and maybe that part of this whole thing is that the message is coming in there, but at the same time, I really don't think it matters. There's a part of me that says we're doing all of this. People are not waking up to how we want them to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And now I do start to think, does it really matter? Actually, does it matter if anybody wakes up? Does it matter if we all die tomorrow? They drop a bomb on us. Does it really matter? Who's it mattering to? Is it just cutting our experience short? The tape has come to an end. And then what? Does it really matter? And I don't know that it does. Because if we are all a consciousness that is ever present, and we're all one, and we're all part and parcel of the same thing, we're all having this experience, does it matter? Because I've often thought this, if you just we all think everything's very important. We all think
Mm-hmm.
everything's important. I've got meetings to go to tomorrow. I've got to go and get this done by 6 o'clock. I've got to get this achieved. This must happen. And then there's a knock on the door and a policeman says, I'm sorry, I'm arresting you and putting you in prison. Suddenly you can't do anything. And everything else that was very important is no longer important because you can't do anything. And I think in a way it's a bit like death, that in the physical sense, that you're dead. So everything that you were going to do, you can't do anyway. So it doesn't matter anymore. It's no longer relevant because it doesn't matter. And if I die now in front of you or in another 50 years, which would be quite funny, um, who's benefited really? Um, does any of it matter? And I do wonder whether we're trying to do the impossible. Wake up, wake up. We've got to get
Mm,
out
hmm.
of this slavedom, this tyrannical system, which would be nice to get out of it. I'd love to see the government disappear and not to have and live in a utopian world in which we can just go and farm the things or do the things we want. And so going back to the seeds, the star seeds or the spirits or whatever it is that come in and says, if that's true, I thought, if that's true, we've come to choose this experience. I think of all the starving children in Africa, all the horrible and rather nasty, but quite a lot of deaths that people go through, or the starvation, or the infant deaths that in the old days where they would stick a child up the chimney or shove them into a hedge or drop them down a well, that went on. Why would you choose to come back and do that? Why would you physically choose? Oh, I'm just going to be, I'm going to do that for a few hundred. I'll just keep coming back as Death Cop Baby because I quite fancied that. Or I'm going to come back and be abused as a child in the most vicious way possible. Why would why would a star seed or anything want to
Hmm.
choose that kind of a life?
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know. I mean, I can't answer the question you asked me, partly because I can't remember it, and secondly, I don't know
Thanks for being honest.
whether it matters. I mean, I don't know. You
I,
see, this is the it's very difficult to to pin it down. Other than all I know is I'm conscious.
yeah, my question really was
Why are
why
we
do,
waking people up?
yeah, why are you doing what you're doing? Because obviously, YouTube, you've been battling with them for some time now. They've
Yes,
demonetized you, and fortunately, there's some decent people out there that are.
maybe I'm
Uh,
waking myself up.
do you think that's what it is?
Maybe because I've been an entertainer and a writer and whatever else I'd be, a filmmaker. Um, I'm somebody that's how I work. I perform and am creative. I've always been creating something, whether people like it or not is another kettle of fish. But I've always felt the drive to create. Then I've felt that, oh, I've got this to say. I must, and of course people have fed me stuff, and I've looked at it and I've gone, wow, I didn't know that. And now I start to think, well, I don't know how true any of this is now.
Mm,
And there's part of me that is saying, actually, this is not a very good space to be in. Actually, I'm not really convinced that this is the space to be in. And more than ever, I think this has been a bridge, in fact, to get me onto the land to go and do the things that perhaps I've always wanted to do, because none of it, in a way, I feel I've washed myself. I know that sounds a bit weird.
no, it doesn't. No,
I've
no.
kind of had to cleanse myself by saying this is the truth I believe, and actually now some of it I don't even know if I do believe it because I think we're being diverted. I mean, you're the stuff that you're into with Tartaria and all the rest of it. I think is absolutely fascinating, but I don't know that I really believe too much of it. I like the building stuff because that makes a lot of logical sense, but the Anunnaki and the clones and all this, I just think there's a lot of stuff just keeping us entertained. I think the whole thing
Yeah,
is about entertainment. We're all being entertained by these and following, oh, look at this, isn't it exciting? Or what does it mean? It's like the flat earth and the round earth
yeah,
and saying you've got it's this or that. Why isn't it something else, for one thing?
yeah.
But
That's my question.
why isn't it something else? There's always these two options. And what difference does it make?
Mm,
Oh, and all they can come up with, I mean, particularly the flat earth people will say, but it's a big lie, isn't it? Why have they told us this big lie? And you go, but they're telling us lies. Everything is a lie.
mm,
Everything is a lie. That we think we're in a 3D world. That's a lie. All I really know is I am conscious. I can't touch, see, feel, and breathe anything without using a sense.
mhm.
I can't actually get to the thing. And that's what really bugs me is like, I'm looking at a camera. I'm not actually looking at you, the audience may think I'm looking at you, but I'm actually looking at a camera. But I
Yeah,
can't get to the camera, I have to get to it with hands, which have sensations, which goes to a brain, which feeds my consciousness. I can't drink water and actually get to the water because I have to use, again, all the physical stuff. But I know that's not me. That's not the consciousness. So I can never get to anything. So that tells me none of this is real.
Mm. So you are trapped inside a physical body, a
Well,
consciousness almost trapped.
yes, it's well, I'm trapped only for this very short space of
Yeah,
time. And of course, I could
yeah.
untrap it, as people do when they find it's too much.
But I suppose that this is perhaps an experience, the opportunity for a consciousness to be creative, and this is where we've lost sight, isn't it? Where we've gone down the wrong road. I think that the idea of our lifetime in this vessel or body is for us to experience creativity, to touch, feel, and sense,
I,
and paint and write and sing
I
and dance and
absolutely agree. I totally agree that everything that we're here to be creative, but at the same time, it just occurs to me that everything that's happening is perfect. It may not be perfect for us as seen as humanoid creatures going around with, but it just seems that actually, and I know this sounds very weird, it's perfect. And I'll explain it a different way. If you, it, everything's qualified in a different way. So let's say you take a sausage, an ordinary sausage. You could take a sausage and say that is the perfect sausage because I mean, define what you mean by perfect. It's a perfectly shaped sausage. It looks like a sausage. It, tastes like a sausage, and it's everything is about a sausage. Now, let's say you snap the sausage. Is the sausage less perfect? Well, okay, it's snapped, but look at the snap. Look at the edge of where it snapped. It's snapped perfectly. It's not like space-time continuum made the sausage suddenly start float about. It's perfect. And when you look at mold is formed perfectly. Everything is perfect. It's everything is, you look under a microscope and you see, well, it's mold and you shouldn't eat it, but it's still perfect and it will kill you if it's bad for you perfectly. Do you know what I'm trying to
yeah,
say?
yeah, I
It's
do,
like
yeah.
everything is kind of really perfect because they obey whatever laws of whatever it is. Otherwise, because like in a computer game that's badly designed, you start seeing tears in the universe.
Yeah.
That would be imperfect, wouldn't it?
Mm.
Although those tears are probably quite perfectly formed to the logic of the computer game that says, I can't draw this wall and join anymore because now it's a tear. Um, it seems to me that everything is perfect. So, on that basis, is not all our fears, worries, problems still perfect? That's a deep one, isn't it? I didn't realize we
That
were
is
going to get
very
into all of that.
that's quite profound. Yeah. Yeah,
It's
I don't know what to
perfectly
make of that.
profound.
Yeah. Well, I've got one last question for you.
Fantastic, because I need to go and empty my bladder.
Me too. Tonight,
Yeah.
you can bring somebody back from the dead and you can spend an evening smoking your pipe with them and you
Mm.
can ask them all of the things you would like to know. Who would you bring back?
Oh my goodness. I wish you'd give me advance warning of that.
No, it wouldn't work, would it?
I suppose who would I bring back? Probably Stan Laurel.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, my word.
I would,
Stan Laurel.
yeah.
And what would you ask him? What would you want to know?
I would, because there's not that many outtakes of Laurel and Hardy films. I want to know how they created such geniusness on the screen. I want to know how worried they were about making people laugh, the process. Um, I want to know what would made him tick, what he thought about whether it was just a job, how surprised he was when he realized that people actually found what they did was very funny. I don't know that I would enjoy his company.
Yes.
But the question is, would I enjoy it? At what point in his life would you bring him back? Not when he's dead and he's like at
No,
the
of
end of his life.
course.
I would
No.
probably want to bring him back during his heyday. But
Yeah.
then for all I know, there was a period like anybody may have been very arrogant or they hadn't formed their
Yes,
wisdom yet. So,
yes, of course.
when you bring somebody back, if you're having that conversation, at what point are you bringing them back? Or are you bringing them back in a way that they're not physically there and they've got their whole life's wisdom to be able to impart on you?
I think that would be a nicer way of doing it.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's kind of where I was. I always thought about bringing back the and I with YouTube, it's difficult to know what you can and can't bloody say now, isn't it? Especially in recent days. But I always thought about bringing back the Chancellor of Germany that was in power in the late 30s and early 1940s to find out what the bloody hell was going on. I thought that would be a fascinating conversation, and yeah, just to
One would assume that they are going to be amicable with you and have that conversation. I mean, I might
I would
bring,
like to hope so. Yeah,
bring back Stan Laurel. So I'm not saying it. I mean, if you brought back, say, an actor from the silent era, for example, you might just go, not saying a word.
yeah. The reason I was in silent movies is I'm mute.
I'm mute. But they may not want to talk to you. That's the
No,
thing.
no. I think it needs to be hypothetical, doesn't it? Really, well,
Yes.
obviously it is anyway. But I just often wonder that there was always that sort of question people would say, you can have a dinner party, you can invite three
Who would you
people.
invite? Yeah.
Yeah, who would you invite? And everybody always, well, normally 9 times out of 10, someone will chuck Jesus around the table, and then there'll be an obscure one, so they look really interesting. But Stan Laurel, that's I think that's the entertainer in you.
It is, of course. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely. Um, would, yeah, it would be a great conversation.
yeah. Well, thank you for a great conversation.
Thank you very much for asking me. I hope somewhere in there was some intelligent talk that might amuse somebody somewhere.
Well, I think it's nice to hear your opinion because everybody I speak to on a daily basis um, talks about the Anunnaki and cloning, and it's nice to hear somebody who's just not on the same page
Mm.
um, put a different perspective out there that I think is worth considering. So no,
Well,
I
I
really
don't know that
appreciate.
anything I've said is worth considering, but it's my viewpoint. So, and tomorrow it might change. That's the
I
thing.
yeah, I keep saying to people that I'm happy to be wrong, as long as someone can tell me the truth. I'm happy to be proven wrong. I just want to
Well,
know. I just want to know
define
what it
the
is.
thing is, I mean, this is where I suppose in a way I've got a bit tired with the truth movement. Is I don't think you can find the truth. I don't think there is a truth. There's your
Mm,
truth. It's what you understand to be the true. And with me, I've kind of got to that point where we're all trying to say, well, this is right, this is right, this is true, this is
mm.
true, this is true. And when you get there, are you ever going to get there? And how do you know you've got there? And did you pass the truth? Oh, it was back there now. And I realized that actually all I really want to do is sit probably in a shepherd's hut with my pipe and just be. And suddenly realize that's actually what I want to do. Yeah, do a bit of
Mm.
writing, make people laugh. But I don't give a monkey's now about the truth. As long as I'm not being interfered with and I'm
Yes,
left
that's
alone, I
yeah,
just want, that's really what most people want to do. They just want to get on and enjoy their lives.
yeah.
And sadly, because we are interfered with
Mm.
meddlers, we have to push back against it. But as far as the truth is concerned, it's yours, Guy. You go looking for it.
Thanks. Well, thanks again, Richard,
Pleasure, absolute
for
pleasure.
chatting to me. It was lovely to speak to you.
No,
Right. Well, thank you again, and goodbye for now.
cheerio.